Welcome. We are live from the Quad Conference Center, actually, here in Menlo Park, where the site of the AI Forum 2026 will be on March 19th. So if you're not here yet, you'll get kind of sneak preview as you're looking at the center here. We were here last year. I'm here with my amazing co-host, Vala Afshar, and of course, co-founder of DisrupTV and the author, Autonomous, and our amazing producer, Elle, who keeps us sane. Actually, we keep her insane, but that's a different problem. Two amazing guests. I'll introduce them in reverse order of appearance. One does not need, actually, both do not need any introduction, but Dr. David Bray, where are you coming in from? What are we talking about today?
Well, I wish I was where you were, Ray, but I'm actually outside the blast radius of Washington, D.C., and we're going to be tackling post-Davos. What do the influence of technology and geopolitics look like, and how does it impact boards and CEOs?
No, great topic, and it's going to be a precursor for the Constellation Futures Forum at an undisclosed location sometime in March. Peter, welcome. Where are you coming in from? What are we talking about? Are you in a blast radius?
Blast radius of Palo Alto, I guess. But you know what? I think we're doing what is it, AGI today? You know, no big deal.
No one's getting killed. We'll be okay. You got kill switches? We got kill switches. So. No, we're going to be talking about some great stuff, and really, we're honored to have you here. Both of you came back from Davos, and of course, we wanted to go more in depth with you while we're here. So, with that, let's kick it back to Elle, who's going to do the count, and of course, we'll be sending out our socials. Please follow them. Look on Twitter, look on YouTube, and of course, just follow Vala's actually Twitter handle, Vala Afshar, and you can find everything you need. So, and of course, the Disrupt TV show website. So, all right, all yours. Turning it back to you. Go ahead.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on X and send your questions to Disrupt TV show. Ray, myself, and our distinguished guests will do our best to answer them live. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wong. He's the CEO, founder of Constellation Research. He does podcasts outdoors. He's the best-selling author of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I don't know. I see him on TV just about every day. Bloomberg, Fox Business, CNBC. He's one of the top futurists to follow on X at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray, to Disrupt TV.
Well, happy to be home. I'm here with Vala Afshar, Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce. He's also the author of multiple books, including Boundless and Autonomous, #1 sellers on Amazon and the Path to the Future. And as he might have hinted, he's got a new one coming out soon. Executives around the world pay attention to every one of his inspirational and insightful tweets. And when he's not hosting, keynoting, or leading events at Salesforce, you can find him speaking on and posting insightful analyses on ZDNet. But more importantly, he's one of the top keynoters in the world. If you have not heard him speak, you're going to want to catch him live at a Salesforce event or a very, very special Salesforce event. With that, it's not about us. It's always about our amazing guests. And of course, coming back from Davos, who do we have here to kick it off today?
Talk about amazing speakers. When I first met Peter and he was on stage speaking, you could hear a pin drop. Peter Danenberg, a distinguished software engineer at Google, where he has made significant contributions to the field of artificial intelligence through his work on Google Gemini. Peter leads rapid prototyping for the Gemini AI platform. His work has shaped some of Gemini's most influential features, including code canvas and computer use, and reaching tens of millions of daily users. Peter specializes in building self-orchestrating reasoning loops, autonomous infrastructure, I love autonomous, production-grade tools under extreme time pressure, often going from concept to demonstrations in 24 hours or less. Peter leads user outreach and conducts weekly workshops. I think it's 300 attendees. These workshops serve as a platform for Peter to share his experience and insights into Google's AI projects, fostering a deeper understanding and engagement among employees. Welcome, Peter, to DisrupTV.
No, thanks so much for having me. And by the way, Vala, the reason why you can hear a pin drop is because I'm so soft-spoken, and everybody's straining to hear. It's actually a really useful device. Yeah.
You definitely have a radio voice, that's for sure.
I appreciate that. Now, so the funny thing is, inside of Google, one of my claims to fame is I do these demos that are, I push up to leadership or whatever, and typically it's like 30 to 60-minute clips, and it could be anything from I don't know, Gemini and Roblox to whatever we're doing, but nobody really cares about the content. Apparently, they're all soothed by the voice.
That's a superpower that Ray and I are seeking, but unfortunately, I don't think we're going to find it.
He is the Mark Rober at Google, doing some cool stuff. The guy with the squirrels and the fun NASA experiments. So that is Peter. The reason actually I get very excited when I talk to Peter is because he loves it. We love talking to people who love their craft. And one of the things that, you do is this meetup that happens every 3 to 4 weeks. And I think this Gemini meetup has gotten so popular. I think it started with like 10, 20 people. Now you got 200-300 people piling through, trying to, share what they built in AI. The Valley was built on this. I mean, I remember in the 90s where we would just go to every other corporation's like events, right? They'd share what they were building. They'd talk about what they were doing. They were passionate. It was partly recruiting. It was partly knowledge sharing. It was also partly trying to, pay it forward for folks. And that's something really special that exists in terms of your Google Gemini meetup. So, but how do you end up at Google? Like, I mean, did you write a paper? Did you were you a Google scholar? Like, was a professor at Stanford? Did Larry and Sergey said, "Oh, I like Peter. Yeah, let's bring him in." Like what was this? What was that magic? So
yeah, that's such a tough one, Ray. I got into such a strange backdoor, and I remember I think I was working on my 3rd PhD. Somehow I dropped out of 3 PhDs, but I got into some crazy backdoor, and I'll never forget. So the entire interview process took about 9 months. And I remember at the end of the day, my last interview came down to lunch, and this is crazy. And so I was competing against this other woman. She was PhD, super smart. And for whatever reason, they just took me because I guess they liked me a little bit better. But somehow the fact that my entire career hinged on that lunch is just a little bit crazy to me. But, back then, I don't know what it was. Google was famous for taking weird people, right? So let's say I have this background in humanities and computer science and music and other strange things. It seemed like they liked to pick these generalists and then just kind of let them cook, so to speak. And so I think I was just fortunate to get in a really interesting time. If I applied today, honestly, I don't think I could pull it off. But yeah, it's been quite a journey. And then even within Google, somehow, took this really strange meandering route to Bard and eventually to Gemini, but it all kind of started with my love of languages and NLP, and somehow that led to the assistant, that led to Bard, that led to Gemini, and still I think that love of languages endures. I think this collaboration that we're doing with LLMs, for me, it feels like an extension of my love for languages, and in that sense, it's just anyway. I feel lucky to be alive during this time, and kind of at ground zero of this whole thing.
That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, clearly, your passion for philosophy and literature. You're active in the Toastmaster community. You have the Google Rugby Club meetup you organize.
That's right.
You mentioned a lot of music, specifically piano, and I believe for the last decade, you've organized monthly shows featuring Google musicians. So, and then you talk about natural language processing. So to me, it seems like it was like a merger of 2 key passions for you, computers and language. But given the fact you love sports, you love music, you study philosophy and literature, how are these foundational joys that you have help shape who you are and how you're guiding your team, creating the most advanced capabilities at Google? What has sports and music and just community building taught you as a leader?
Oh, wow, that's such a great question. Part of what it is, when we do these Gemini meetups every couple of weeks, and by the way, if you happen to be in the Bay Area, please stop by. It's every other Friday, GeminiMeetup.ai. One of the things is I get to meet our users, right? And, that's the first time in my career at Google I've ever been able to do that. And I remember the whole reason why we started this is this friend of mine, my neighbor at the time, came over and said, "Hey, listen, Peter, every time I go into the city, I can literally spit and, OpenAI is at some event, and OpenAI, they're winning hearts and minds by just showing up." And I thought, you know what, if OpenAI is doing it, we have to do something. And so I remember I went to my VP, I said, "Listen, I'd love to do this meetup. I want to do this Gemini meetup." And it probably took about 6 months to get permission, but somehow by hook or by crook, I eventually got it. But here's a really interesting thing. So, when you're sitting there staring at, I don't know, like 400 to 600 eyeballs, and if for whatever reason Google or Gemini happens to screw up that week, occasionally I'm on the hot seat. It can be sort of nerve-wracking. But the fact is, people come and they share their joys, their passions, they share their tragedies. I mean, one of the couple of things I'll never forget is we had this meetup when I think they retired like GPT-4o. This is a while back, and people had this collective there was this collective grieving process, and people literally, crying over the death of a loved one. And I thought to myself, wow, I read about these people on Reddit, and I can't believe they actually exist. But sometimes people would just come to me and say things like, "Peter, like I really, really wish, I could talk to Bart at the time about let's say the election, and can you make this happen? This is really frustrating." And so I can actually take things that they ask me, I can go directly to leadership, and effectively I can advocate for our users, right? And I can't tell you how amazing that is. And even just crazy things where I'll come up with a quick prototype, I'll get permission to demo it, and I'll just get this early feedback. And it's really interesting because the sort of things that our users feel and the sort of things that they want are sometimes, occasionally, 180 degrees removed from what direction we're going. And so to have that early feedback, it's so amazing. And anyway, the sort of things that have come out of this meetup have just been really, really unexpected. And another thing that people have, they'll just have crazy ideas. Like maybe, I don't know, the kids are under Roblox, and, can Gemini help my kids do, in this Roblox day trading market, something like that. And so anyway, that whole thing has been a joy and has been incredibly fertile. And by the way, Ray, you've been there, and maybe you can tell me a little bit just what you think the vibe is like. But in general, I try not to make the vibe pitchy. I try not to make it pushy. I try to make it feel like, we're just getting together and chilling, and there's some snacks in the micro kitchen, and I try to give it that old Silicon Valley, that old Google vibe.
It is the old Google vibe. It is really nice to be able to have that sharing that didn't exist. It hasn't been like this. Like for 10 years, we've missed out on this. And so you're bringing it back. And I hope other companies do that. They open up their offices, they share their ideas, they bring people together. I think for some people, it might be the only meal they have that day too, giving people go through their snacks. I mean, they've been working through the startups. Again. But it's a nice thing to see the community come together. And I think part of it is really, that's how we used to build software. That's how we used to bring everyone together, whether you're in the consumer or the enterprise. That was one of the things that made the Silicon Valley so special. So it's great that you're doing that. And I try to go. I was there for the death of GPT-4. That was true. The folks were there. So yeah. But hey, but we've seen massive progress with Gemini since last year, right? I've been on TV talking about how Google's ahead. Right, and Google's ahead, and I've been getting my ass kicked all the time. But what we have seen now is like you are ahead, right? But how are multimodal models being incorporated in the enterprise? Because it just started as language models, then we got vision, then we got audio, we got a whole bunch of stuff that was happening. Where do you see that going? And without saying anything that doesn't it just like, where do you see the applications like starting to take off for you?
No, that's interesting. So you're right, Ray. Actually, the multimodal thing, let's say our upward swing really started with the nano banana moment.
Yeah.
We just had this beautiful, like we were waiting for something like that, and just this beautiful moment of virality, and just to kind of kick things off. And then I think we had Gemini 3, and then somehow there's just been this nice sort of sequence of wins. And But yeah, the multimodal is really unexpected. I mean, I notice at the Gemini meetup, so it's interesting in the sense, so everybody's been doing image generation. And so if somebody has a campaign, they'll generate some images. But one of the things I notice that people are doing is that if they have some product pictures or something like that that aren't totally perfect, they can put them banana, clean them up sort of easily, and then people are doing this really creative thing where, I mean, even with, let's say, videos, you can generate about 8 seconds at a time. And I noticed that people are getting really creative with sort of stitching together essentially these 8-second clips with continuity to tell like an entire story. And that's one of the things I've been noticing. But in addition to that, just, even things like Notebook LM and people creating podcasts on the way to work, people have been doing that for a while now. And so but the one thing I've been kind of waiting for, and I think this is probably the next thing on the horizon, are these ambient models that sort of, they're companions with you in the world. And let's say they're seeing what you see, they're listening to what you're hearing. And, basically they have this immediate context with whatever you're experiencing. And so, you can basically talk to them about some of the things that you're experiencing. You don't have to like pull the phone out of your pocket, open the app, sort of talk with the app. That'll sort of be right there with you. And in order to make that happen, we have to have these really good multimodal models that are capable of, processing not just images, but sound and text. So I think my gut tells me, maybe that sort of ambient companion plus these new so-called world models, I have a feeling that's sort of the next horizon, and we're just sort of starting to explore that integration of all the senses and just see where that can take us. But that's exciting to me.
That's very cool. That's very cool. You're obviously a no pun intended, deep thinking person, and you had a fascinating TED talk last year titled "Competence in the Age of LLMs." Anyone watching right now, please go just Google Peter and his TED talk. And you had a brain scan of 3 groups: pencil and paper group, and Google search people, and then LLM people. And these were folks working on creative, complex tasks. And you show the different brain scans, and amazing to see the pencil and paper and the Google search people like opposite color-coded brain scan, where the center is red for the paper and pencil and it's blue for the Google search, and vice versa.
That's right.
But then you show like the cool blue. I don't want to give away the TED talk, but what the LLM
that's a great TED talk, dude.
And there was a little bit of a hint of advice that maybe over time we might erode our critical thinking if we rely so much on these language models. And of course, given your philosophy literature background, you go all the way back to Aristotle and Socrates, and you mentioned the concept of poetic, this rhetoric based on making and generating worlds versus prerastic, which is dialectic in the art of testing things. And you mentioned that, my takeaway was, a good mentor doesn't help you, helps you learn how to think, not what to think. And so my takeaway was maybe we need to create LLMs that pressure test, have dialectic engagement with us. And you cited a Microsoft study that said, look, outsourcing your critical thinking is going to turn all of us into verifiers of information, which to me, as an engineer, critical thinking person who I think I am, was kind of scary. So can you talk to us about, you still maintain, you talk a little bit about your TED Talk, because I found it fascinating.
I mean, you hit all the high points, but that brain scan with the LLMs, which the brain was more or less totally inert, right? That sort of shocked me a little bit. And the pencil and paper people like on fire, right? Which is incredible. No, so one of the projects I've been doing, just in line with that. So I decided to basically, practice what I preached in some sense, and I decided to take this idea of a testing LLM, a parastic LLM seriously. And so I've been working with Peter Norvig and some people over at Oxford
Oh, wow.
on this new kind of, let's say, Socratic kind of dialectical learning system. It turns out everybody's working on this thing, but we've been working on this, and I found something really interesting. So we tested this at the Google Meetup, and we had people come for a couple hours and basically test the system out, and they were just learning some basic concepts in computer science. I think, traveling salesmen, some of the people were going through this Karpathy, how to create a GPT video. And I was watching the audience, and I noticed something funny, that after about 10 to 15 minutes of being questioned by the LLM, they basically had enough, right? There's this thing where, like, it turns out being questioned by the LLM, it's exhausting. And people have a finite, if the LLM is truly there to test you, it seems like people have a finite patience, a finite energy for that. Yeah. And so it's really, so I think one thing that we'll have to figure out is how to get the balance right. And so one thing that Peter Norvig and I are trying to figure out is, let's say you're engaged with the LLM in this dialectic, and you don't just want to be peppered with questions. And one of Peter's analogies that I really love is that if you come away from an encounter with the LLM, he says, you should have something which is the equivalent of like a coloring book. So you go to a coloring book as you're a kid, and you color the page, and you're so proud of this thing that your folks, they stick it on the fridge or whatever. He says essentially at the end of this interaction, you should have something to stick on the fridge. And so kind of what we're working through is how do you balance this testing part with this creative part, with this making part. And so I think it's possible
a gamification component, or
yeah, maybe a little bit, but at least at the end of the interaction with the LLM, if there's something which you create and you have a sense of ownership over, because so one of the other side effects of the MIT study, and one of the things I didn't talk about, is that they interviewed, so these people in the study, the pencil and paper people, the Google search people, the LLM people, they interviewed them afterwards about how they felt about these artifacts, about these things they'd created. So whether it was a creative writing essay or a program. And the funny thing is that the LLM people had almost zero sense of ownership over the work. It was almost as if it was somebody else's, alien artifact or whatever you call it. And whereas the pencil and paper people who's kind of sweated over this thing, like they felt that essay was like legitimately theirs. And by the way, the pencil and paper people kind of remembered, they had good memory of almost everything in that essay. Yeah. The LLM people, if you ask them, hey, by the way, what's this weird thing that happened in like the third paragraph, and they have no idea what you're talking about. Okay. And so anyway, somehow to let the LLM, test you, not just necessarily give you answers, but somehow to be engaged in that creative process and to have this artifact, this thing at the end that you feel ownership over, I think somehow that's going to be the magical combination. And like you said, whether there's some gamification involved, but hopefully the joy just comes from the act of creation itself. And, just this thing that you can stick up on GitHub or stick up on X or whatever, and just say, hey, listen, I made this beautiful thing. So anyway, I think that's going to be interesting. And then just one kind of last thing in that vein is that so one of the things they're famous for at Oxford is this tutoring system, right? Where you have this professor that literally sits down with you one-on-one on a regular basis, and helps guide you in your educational thing, right? And this is probably as close to something like original Socratic dialectic that you'll get. And one of the things that the Oxford folks are telling me is that in order for the professor to pull that off, the professor has to have an amazing amount of not only IQ, but an amazing EQ to sort of see where the student is and to be able to guide them towards some point. And so the thing with the LLMs, and if you talk to the people at the meetup, especially there's this guy Jim White that comes, he'll tell you that LLMs should have an infinite capacity for EQ, as well as and I don't want to say the jury's out on that, but I'll put it this way: I think that's sort of one thing that we're working on still. Can the LLM really see you and figure out where you are?
I hope that the parasitic LLM has EQ, LQ, and IQ. Love coaching. I'm hopeful to fall in love with like how Tony Stark and Jarvis, they were in love. I felt like that relationship was
a close relationship. It was a very close relationship.
Of value. So I want LQ as part of it as well, if it's possible.
That's a good one. Oh man,
that's awesome, man.
I love that.
Well, hey, we
Yeah.
can't not talk about Davos here. We got Holger Mueller listening. He's on his edges here. What did you see from the MIT Stanford Hail event? There's a lot going
man.
there.
Yeah.
Look at that. He thinks, oh, look at that on Holger. He's checking it in. But yeah, well, it was a pretty good event, right? I mean, John Warner did a good job, right?
Oh,
We
yeah,
got all these folks
he did a
together.
great job.
I mean,
Yeah.
everybody was brought in. It's the best of MIT, best of Stanford, sitting in the middle of Davos at the Ice Dome. I mean, it's pretty well.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, honestly, Ray, that was my first time at Davos. And one of the funny things that happened is, so Eric Schmidt was trying to get out of the dome, and it turned out he had no security, right? And I don't know if you were there, but they deputized me, Eric Schmidt's bodyguard, and they said, "Okay, listen, bro, like he said, like Moshe, listen, you're going to have to part the Red Sea, and you're going to have to create this you're going to have to create this lane for Eric Schmidt." And so I don't know, that was one of the craziest things, just sort of being anointed Eric Schmidt's bodyguard, and then, but no, honestly, just the fact that so many incredible people in such a small radius, and I found myself having these conversations. Like, I was talking to this one guy about why LLMs can't do music. So, if I tell the LLM, hey, listen, bro, I'm trying to learn this Bach fugue, and I'm deep in like measure 23 of this thing, and somehow musically it's not making sense, and blah blah blah, and it turns out the LLM really, for some reason, just doesn't do a great job. And so we were talking about how to fix this. And then at some point, like, I realized, and I was so stupid, but I realized I'm talking to one of the original authors of like the Transformer paper, like literally the thing that kind of kicked everything off. And so, just things like that happen. Or, I bumped into Andrew Ng, and I talked to him a little bit about this Socratic project that we're working on. So, I mean, that was kind of a unique event. But tell me this, Ray, and were you there for the inauguration? Was in 24 or whatever?
24. No, I wasn't there. I think a number of people were. So.
Oh yeah, but tell me this. What's kind of funny is Davos, to me, had a little bit of that Washington D.C. vibe, in the sense that there's all these fantastic parties, and as long as you have monies or connections, you can get in. And it's sort of but it's like one or the other or both, and and it just it had a little bit of that vibe.
Oh, it's.
My last question to you, and I don't know you, but the karma, the vibe that you give off is someone who's a community builder, a giver, and someone that just cares about shared success. Your mom, Kathleen Danenberg, has been a chief executive officer of several companies, biotech companies. And so I'm curious, because my mom is my hero. I want to grow up to be my mom. So my question to you, you've had an incredibly successful mom. I believe she was at USC running laboratories and research. I believe when you were studying there at some point. How has she shaped your career? How has she influenced you? And at some point, I see you as a co-founder, CEO of companies, just given the pedigree and the influence I'm sure your mom has had on you. Talk to us about, if you can, how she's influenced you.
Oh, it's amazing, and thanks so much for asking that, Vala. We just had this event in San Francisco. This was, I think, last week, and so my mom and my dad and we had this little panel on stage.
Oh my
God! I'll let you know if there's a little bit quick, but we basically got to talk about that because my mom and my dad, they had this beautiful yin yang thing where, so my dad is a professor and my mom was the entrepreneur, and what happened is they would develop things in my dad's lab, and then my mom would sell it. And so growing up, my whole table talk thing was just always biotech and cancer research and this and that. And, but my mom's ability just to like walk into a room. And the funny thing is, even after we gave this talk in San Francisco, like I could tell she was working the room and she was trying to find investors for her new thing. But just her ability to do that was kind of amazing. And you know what, in my heart of hearts, I want to do that so badly. Like I keep thinking about, what's an idea that I can take to market? How can I be more like my mom in that sense? And oh man, I've really that's something that's been on my heart for quite a while. And God willing, maybe I can figure that out. Because honestly, somehow I don't know what it is to have a little bit of that, like that scientific creativity my dad had, but then just that ability to like bring rubber to road like my mom did and sort of productize these things. that would sort of be a dream come true. So
That's a
anyway, well, the short answer is
That's a certainty in your future. And by the way, I'm making a note. Ray at Next Constellation Connect Enterprise, the Danenberg family need to have a panel session because that may be the first ever mom, dad, son panel. I've never seen that before. So
that would be really cool. Taking the conversation about entrepreneurship, science, right, and the Valley onto one-place academia.
Oh my God.
Liquid genomics meets. It's crazy. That'd be pretty wild.
Front row taking notes.
Peter,
that's amazing.
Absolute pleasure. I'll see you at the next meetup. AI
great.
Forum 3819 here at the Quad Center. We'll see you here. So
Wonderful.
March 19th.
Can't wait.
All right. We'll see you.
Thank you, Peter.
Hey, thanks for
Take
being
care.
here.
Cheers.
All right.
Big mind. I'm sorry. I keep saying deep thinker, big mind. I think I'm
deep mind, big thinker. I don't know.
No pun intended. I don't mean to do that. I subconsciously. But talking about deep and big. Anyone who's watched our show for 10 years, there's no need for an introduction for our next, I'm going to say co-host. I don't even consider David. But Dr. David Bray is Principal CEO of LDA Ventures, Chair of Accelerator and Distinguished Fellow at NGOs and Loomis Council and at Stimson Center and Global Speaker. David presents to boards and CEOs of Fortune 1000 companies. He's a distinguished fellow and business executive for national security and serves as CEO for a number of, under the radar tech and data ventures. David, you have to be in a very, very inner circle to know about those. Ray and I hopefully are in that inner circles.
You are in the inner circle.
David has
Don't tell anyone.
David has received both the Joint Civilian Service Commendation Award and National Intelligence Exceptional Achievement Medal. Business Insider called him the 24 Americans who are changing the world under 40. And World Economic Forum has named him, obviously, as a young global leader. He's been at every Davos that I know. Welcome back, David, to DisrupTV.
Well, thank you, Vala. And it's great to be here with you and Ray. And again, thank you for shining a light on disruption that's happening. And it was also great to hear from Peter. I was listening to what he was talking about, how we're recognizing a need to have LLMs or other forms of AI that don't pester you with questions, but sort of meet you in the moment. And I think what I'll be really interested, because he also was talking a little bit about ambient AI. I think what I hope is we'll have ambient AI that'll learn, for example, Ray is best at this time of day, whereas Vala is best at this time of day. And actually Ray is perfectly fine with being peppered with questions, whereas other people may want other things. And so if we can make it more personal and make it more adaptive to the fact that there are different ways of learning, that to me gets exciting.
Yeah, we're definitely going to see that. And if we think about what's happening in this marketplace, those nudges, those ambient experiences, those are things that we get when we get to some level of situational awareness, right? Your EQ and the situational awareness that is there is probably easier to do than the LQ that Vala was talking about. So the LQ is going to come in a very different way.
I really want people to have strong LQ. We need more love in this world. But
we need more love. We need more love. But hey, post-Davos 2026, I mean, you're watching this and you're watching the conversations and you got your ear to the ground there. What's the most dangerous assumption executives were making about their technology partnerships? Because there's something going on, and it's more than the circular issue. So
100%. Well, I mean, and again, I think last year's Davos was a preview of where we were going. This year's Davos made it very clear that the era of globalization at the moment is currently on hold, if not ended. And I think really what you're seeing is companies as well as countries are being really asked to pick a side. You see there's the US obviously asking people to pick its side. You see China, which was not so much at Davos, but it's doing other things around the world, also in 2026 saying pick its side. And then you have other countries that are trying to figure out, do we have to pick a side? Can we form a bloc of our own? What is the future of Europe? You see, for example, Europe, even right before Davos, entering into trade relationships with South America. And so this is an interesting world in which I would say we're now in whatever comes after globalization, but that's still sorting itself out. And the reason why boards and CEOs should care is your supply chain, if it's global, will probably get disrupted. It's not a question of if, it will. If you have partners that are maybe you have a partner that looks like it's the same country that you're in, but they have subsidiaries or other partnerships that maybe are in other countries, that is also a risk. And so I think it really is sort of what I tell boards and CEOs right now. You may not care about geopolitics, but geopolitics cares about you.
You had a chance to connect with CEOs, board members. Certainly 2026 is the year of scaling implementation of AI. It's no longer about discussing it or piloting it in a lab. Just at my company alone, we're working with tens of thousands of companies that are in scale and deployment. How is the conversation around balancing deployment and scale of AI and its impact on workers, human workers, not digital workers, understanding that this is a disruptive technology that will have material impact inside your company as well as outside your company?
So what I'm seeing is if a company is publicly facing, they really have a challenging balance between meeting both the needs of their shareholders and meeting the fact that they are responsible to their shareholders, but also meeting the needs of their workforce. And so you see some companies that are letting go of lots of workers. Hopefully they've done the assessment as to which ones they do and don't need. But I also sometimes am concerned that that may actually be more to recognize that, yes, shareholders want to see profitability. But I also think, and you heard a little bit from Peter as well, we may be discovering that while generative AI and other types of AI can do really impressive things, I'm also seeing, and this is happening more with companies that are not public, where they actually bring something that's a human and an AI, for example, in cybersecurity. And they let the AI, for example, get trained on all the critical vulnerabilities. The AI can then do the known knowns, but then they have the human deal with the unknown unknowns and sort of feed that information once they discover it back to the machine. Those are the ones that are winning. And so I would recommend, while it is, of course, being a publicly facing CEO right now is incredibly hard, really having a conversation with your shareholders and your board that say, look, we're going to do everything to maximize profitability. At the same time, if we outsource our thinking, we outsource our talent, again, you heard it from Peter, if you outsource your thinking, you may find that you will have a short-term gain for your company, but you may not have a long-term one. And so it really is about pairing AI with humans.
So the balancing act, if I hear correctly, is leverage the technology for cognitive transfer of low value, repetitive, deterministic, low complexity, possibly low complexity work, and then cognitive upgrade of your human labor, leveraging technologies, language models and agentic and physical, so that you can turbocharge your creativity and give your human labor safe space and time to give birth to ideas. One of the things that I loved about Peter's TED Talk was that it's the testing of ideas, not generating words, that gives you the opportunity to give birth to new ideas. And if we, outsource our critical thinking to a point where when you ask a question of someone about their work and they can't speak to it because it's not their work, how do you ever reach mastery if you're not testing and having those back and forths? And I was surprised that, Peter talked about fatigue in terms of repetitive questions. I got to tell you, when I think about the person that shaped my thinking most, it was my graduate advisor. And because he had learning by first principle, where you had to get to the grounded truth, he would pepper spray me with questions all day, all night, all week. And as much as I was frustrated going through that process of getting pepper sprayed with questions until I got to the grounded truth is what created the critical thinking muscle that I have. So I'm not sure if fatigue with LLMs, with repetitive questions, is a bad thing. I don't know.
Well, as long as you're signing up for it. And I think that's what so you're right. There's this tension between companies want to sell engagement, but you chose to do that. And I often tell people, because I only went and got a PhD after responding to the events of 9/11 and anthrax. And then even then, after I got my PhD in the business school, I do what everyone does. And after you get a PhD, I went to Afghanistan. So, people label me an academic. I'm like, no,
I would have gone to Cancun or Aruba, but okay, yeah.
Exactly. But what I would say, and this is to your talk, is that I often tell people PhD is is academic boot camp, where they break down your way of thinking and you build you back up, and then you can apply that to any scenario in business or wherever. That's right. And I think as long as people know that that's what you're signing up for, that's great. And I do think what we may be seeing is a transformation about how we teach. And I really wish I mean, there's a whole debate about AI in school. What's the right age? I really want to see, can we teach people to critique when the machine gets something wrong? Because it will get something wrong, just like a human.
Sure.
And then how do you interrogate the machine to get it better?
Great. That's right. Learning has to be bidirectional.
100%.
It's bidirectional. 100% bidirectional.
Can you in real time ground the model, tune the model, whatever it is, to ensure that in the presence of better information, it can also change its mind.
Right. But also not be so, because there's some models, you've seen them, I won't name them, where they just, whatever you say, they're like, oh, you're right. And you're like, no.
Oh, yeah.
Back.
No. It's amazing. And I'm not going to name names, but there are definitely personalities, and there are definitely generative output that just wants to reaffirm and
keep you engaged, even if it's giving you like.
For those of you watching, just do this. The next time you have an input prompt, add to the end of the input prompt, and please answer knowing my job is on the line. And I promise you, there are at least 2 models out there that will give you a better answer, much better answer.
Yeah, one might start with a P and one might start.
I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
We're not naming names.
We're not going to name names. Okay, no names. We're on live television. But let's talk about AI, right? In the sense of AI and cyber attacks, AI at machine speed. I mean, what's happening, right? Like, how do you even respond, right? Our guy Chirag Mehta says, hey, post-breach resiliency, but at what speed, at what cost, at what response level? Like, what's happening?
So you're absolutely right. That what we're seeing is that with these tools that include AI, but other things as well, automation like, the speed and scale of both good things that can happen as well as bad things like cyber attacks, but also other types of exploits are just massive. I mean, you can create the appearance of people not liking your brand that are all bots. And I mean, we saw this back in 2017, 2018, but now it's just unprecedented tools to disrupt the business's activity through coordinated and authentic activity. And so I think what companies need to do is they need to look at their core processes, whether it's core processes with a customer, core processes with how do you keep the business going, core processes for how do you keep your data and your assets safe, and say, given the impacts of AI and automation, are we able to be responsive and adaptive at machine speed? If not, then I guarantee you, either a competitor or a bad actor will use machine speed to take you down. And we've seen, there's been public acknowledgments, Anthropic is one, but there's been others that talk about how nation state actors appear to be using openly available generative AI tools to plan very sophisticated targeted attacks on corporations. And so again, it's not about saying, get rid of the chief information security officer. It's about letting the chief information security officer focus on the novel threats. And like Vala said, focus on the everyday known routines, because I guarantee you, if you only do what's known, you're going to fall increasingly behind. But it has to be at machine speed. And I think the reason why we're seeing it, going back to geopolitics, nations don't really want to have overt war, but we are in this period in which they're contesting each other. And we mentioned some of the actors, including one of 1.3 billion people, the US as well, and others. And so the way they test each other, especially in the United States, where our companies we're a free society, we're visible, is they target taking out a company's bottom line. They may short the stock and actually profit from shorting the stock. They may try to actually have a theft of IP, or they may actually try to make some employee or some leadership in the company look bad in a manufactured event. And so it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and having that conversation with your board to say, look, what are we doing to make sure we are both instrumenting the tripwires to know if this is even happening to us, and then being able to respond at machine speed.
So I accidentally walk into a room at Davos and realize it's CEOs only. And there happen to be 10 CEOs in the room. What percentage of those 10 CEOs are actually focused on geopolitics? And if they're not, why should they be? And how would you recommend, you're a CEO, how would you recommend they start? Did they look at the Western Hemisphere? Did they look at a block of ice somewhere up north? Did they look at the Far East? Like, where did they?
Big block of ice.
Right.
Where do they start? How do you? And you're obviously are deeply involved in the blast radius and in Washington and that's your pedigree and that's your network. But how does a CEO of let's say a small size company,
right?
And why should they?
Right. So I think most CEOs write off geopolitics because they don't know what they can do. They feel like either A, it's out of my hands, or it doesn't impact me.
So
I
1
can't.
out of 10 CEOs in that room would have a strong geopolitic understanding?
They might. But again, I think
have to. They kind of have to.
They have to. But
Yeah.
what I would say is the way you engage a CEO and the way you sort of have the conversation is you give them solutions. You give them levers they can pull. And I think it's one of those things that if they don't feel like they can actually pull any levers, then they just give up. They say that's bigger than me.
Yeah.
And I actually think my number one recommendation to CEOs is look at your global operations, or even if you're a mid-sized company, look at your supply chain and say, what am I doing to de-risk the activities given the fact that I might have a global supply chain, given that I may have global operations? And the reality is you have to do it by region, because how I'm going to address things in the Middle East is going to be different than how I'm going to address things in South America. It's going to be different than how I'm going to address things in the Pacific. But what you do is you give them levers and say, here's how you can de-risk. And at the same time, you may actually be able to build up your company's brand. Maybe you'll actually have more clients and customers. It can actually be more profitable while also making your company more adaptive. But what I would say is you got to throw out the globalization playbook, which is you treat everything as global. And if anything, we're now back in the era in which where you're at matters and how you deal with it is all contextual.
Since you have visibility into both CEOs and boards, how many of these CEOs have diverse board makeup where board members represent strong understanding of the geographies that they're a part of?
Less than 20% at the moment, I would say. Yeah, I would say this is
multinational companies.
Yes,
with footprint across dozens of countries, and yet their board makeup is typically grounded into their headquarters, where the location of the HQ.
Well, and it's the same thing. I mean,
or the region.
Region. Boards. How many boards actually have people? No board would ever have anyone on the board that didn't understand how to read a P&L sheet. But it's okay to not understand tech or something like that. You're like, that's somebody else's job. It's the same thing with geopolitics. Like, that's somebody else's job. And so what I think is, again, you don't want to necessarily mix up your board, getting everybody requiring them to have tech and geopolitics, but say that's something you got to have there. Because if you don't have it there, if you relegate it to somebody else's job, then it doesn't become something that you're looking for. And again, the board should be there to de-risk as well as increase profitability.
Last question. Has it risen to a level of importance where there's a C-suite title responsible with virtual teams that help make? Is there a chief geopolitics officer for the Fortune 1000 in the future?
No,
was that government affairs? Is that government affairs or not even government affairs?
No, government affairs.
They're they report to CEO? Do they present at board meetings? No, I don't think so.
So what I'm actually seeing at the moment is general counsels are stepping up. So general counsels are actually saying it's our job to help de-risk. Now, general counsels, that's where they need the tech background because they may get the law and they may get the geopolitics. They don't have the tech. And so what I'm actually seeing is more and more CIOs are getting good relationships with their general counsel because together they have a compelling case when they go to the board and say, here's the tech impacts and the cybersecurity impacts. And then the general counsel says, here's the legal and the policy impacts.
Okay.
That's huge. I mean, that's huge. Like one of the things that we're seeing right now, I mean, we're doing the board offerings. And as you know, Esteban Kolsky is doing the board. And part of the things is, we partner with David here because really the geopolitical piece is another big portion, right? And so one of the things that we do, we're having a special event called our Futures Forum. And at that event, I mean, we're going to be talking a little about the geopolitical risk that's coming. Right, it's a very important piece of the aspect as how it ties in. I mean, right now, do I? And you saw my post for Davos on LinkedIn. The question was, do you have to choose between China or the U.S.? And the short answer is yes.
Yeah,
right?
You do.
You can't. I mean, do I want to be spied by American tech or do I want to be spied by Chinese tech? You have to choose, right? And it's not.
He says this on the eve of the NSA director's confirmation hearing. I don't know why he's saying that.
Yeah.
But I would say real quick. I want to
talk about monetary policy in the Fed. Yeah. Okay.
Because what is fascinating, and again, going back to what Peter's saying, is if when we get AI models, and I don't think LLMs can do it by themselves, but when we get AI models that can predict and build worldviews, what you actually want is, again, pair your general counsel, pair your C-suite, pair the tech folks with AI models that say, where am I my weakest? Where am I my strongest? And it actually is, again, using a combination of AI and humans to de-risk and increase the profitability. But it's got to be done hybrid human, AI, and machine, because otherwise, I guarantee
But I tell you, if you're sitting outside of US or China, right? So you're not a member of either, and you listen to Jensen Huang recently talk about 50% of the top AI researchers in the world are China. more than 50% of AI patents are coming out of China. So again, if you're in the middle and you have to make that decision,
Right.
there's a strong case to be made on both from an innovation point of view, not for,
Right,
just
not
the
other
innovation
cases.
assessment. It's a formidable, two formidable players.
Oh, well, so that's where you got to go to Ray's event, because we'll do a deeper dive and talk about, because I think some of the things we're seeing with PRC, and again, this could easily be another DisrupTV, not everything we see is what's actually happening. This is what I would say.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a very exclusive invite list, so I can't invite everyone. So I'm not inviting everyone. We have
I don't
80.
I don't even get invited, so it's super exclusive.
You're always invited, Vala, so we don't have to worry about that. But David, hey, thank you for that perspective, and of course, we'll be talking more about this going forward. One of the big areas as we have our board and CEO coverage, it's a very important piece. So. But hey, we are with Dr. David Bray, Distinguished Chair of the Accelerator, Stimson Center, and Principal CEO of LDA Ventures, Inc., and more importantly, a good friend of DisrupTV. So thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Friend. He's like a first ballot Hall of Famer, absolutely unanimous voting.
Oh, unlike some coaches that could have been in the Hall of Fame? Is that where you're going here, Vala?
No, the odds of Dr. Bray as a first ballot Disrupt Hall of Fame inductee is 100%.
100%,
as close as you can get. There's only 3 votes. It's L, Ray, and I, and I can say with confidence.
Yeah, I think
he's in.
We'll be good. We'll be good. He's in. So.
All right. Okay. Well, that was amazing. Both Peter and David, just stunningly smart, deep minds. Next week, we're going to have our. Ray, we're 9 interviews away from 1,500 interviews.
Who will be our 1,500th guest?
1,500, just a number, but it's a nice round number. Ends with a 0.
The engineering year is awesome. Like you're keeping track.
I just don't know how many tech podcasts have had 1,500 guests. But anyway, we're 9 away. John Reed, co-founder of Diginomica, will be joining us. One of my favorite guests because he has props and stats and whiteboards, and
he's got the whiteboard. It's the whiteboard. We got to do that.
He's got the whiteboard, and we got Kyle Austin Young, author of "Success is a Numbers Game. Success is a numbers game. Achieve bigger goals by changing the odds." So that's very cool. My hardest class, Ray, in grad school was probability and statistics. So I don't know. It was super counterintuitive. So I want to learn about how I can change odds and so I can set bigger goals. So I'm looking forward to next week. Closing comments for this week's episode, Ray.
Oh, this is some great insight. If you think about what Peter's been doing with Gemini, he's not only building a community, he is also bringing people in. We need to do more of this in our next generation. Pass it forward, create the communities, convene folks, give people opportunities to grow, share, connect, and build their networks. And that's really why I'm really excited to get Peter here. What David's talking about is forefront of every single boardroom. They just don't know it yet. It hasn't hit them. And if you don't understand the geopolitical risk, it's something worth subscribing to. It's something where you want to be able to have an advisor, someone to come in to share with you what that, where the risks are, and more importantly, how you navigate them. That's the more important part. That's not a GA function for government affairs. That's not a lobbyist function. That's something that really takes people that can identify the Venn diagram between multiple disciplines and have that multidisciplinary approach. So that's where we'd see that. But yeah, I would say, it's been amazing. I'm going to make a comment about the tech earnings this week a little bit. I mean, we've seen some amazing earnings. We've seen a backlash on SaaS and AI, which makes no sense to me. And what we've been seeing is just, I think there's a little general jitterishness, if that's a word, in this marketplace. And so I think going forward, it'll be a lot better, but we're going to see a lot more amazing advancements. We see not only AI advancing in every part of the field, but we also see companies that are adopting and building new AI models. We released an AI first, AI exponentials paper, and you can see the companies that are doing 20% digital labor, doing 200,000 revenue per employee. That's just on the services side. You see companies on the software side ramping up like crazy. And that is, to me, one of the most amazing things. I mean, it has never been easier to build. It has never been easier to be a startup, and it's never been harder to get distribution. So it's going to be interesting to watch. So
distribution is life, as
distribution is life.
Chef Jose Andres reminds us. Distribution is life.
Perfect segue into you, dude.
If it's Friday,
It's the best chapter of the book, dude. I love that chapter.
I think so. If it's wait till you see who I'm featuring in the next book. You're surprised.
Ooh, surprise! Come on, tell me more. Tell us more. Tell us more.
I give you 100 guests. You're not going to guess, but we'll save that for another time. If it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye, everyone.
See you next week, guys.